Before names were carved into stone, before kingdoms rose, tribes lived by fear as much as by fire. Every sound in the night, every mark in the dirt could mean life or death. And in a world ruled by signs and omens, nothing was more dangerous than being misunderstood. This is the story of a child who carried no weapon, no curse, and no crime. Only a shadow that bent strange across the firelight, longer than the others, darker when the flames flickered. To the eyes of the fearful, it became proof of evil, proof that she was touched by something beyond the tribe. At first, it was whispers, mothers pulling their children back when she passed, boys daring each other to touch her shoulder as if she carried sickness. But whispers hardened fast into stones. Soon she was mocked, shunned, and blamed for every cough, every failed hunt, every sorrow that struck the village. Yet shadows only exist where there is light. Behind their cruelty, another truth waited to be revealed, one that would show the tribe their fear had blinded them, and that the true curse lived not in the child's shadow, but in the lies of those who envied her. This is not only the tale of superstition, it is the tale of betrayal, of disdain turned to cruelty, and of a girl who learned that the sharpest wounds come not from enemies, but from the hands of her own people. The fire pit glowed weakly in the center of the camp. Children danced around it, their shadows leaping across the huts like playful spirits. But one shadow stretched farther than the rest. Longer, darker, it seemed to cling to the ground like tar. The girl's name was Saya. She was no different from the others, thin from hunger, barefoot on the cold earth, her hair tied in a rough braid. Yet when the flames swayed, her shadow twisted strangely. It bent where others stood straight, curled where others stretched thin. At first, it was nothing more than a game. Boys pointed and laughed. "The shadow that crawls," they cried, chasing it as if it were alive. The girls giggled, throwing pebbles toward it, pretending to ward it off. Saya laughed with them once, thinking it harmless, but the laughter never ended. It grew sharper, crueler. Soon, even elders glanced at the ground when she passed. Mothers pulled their children close. "Do not walk too near her shadow," they whispered. When a cough spread through the camp, they said Sia's shadow carried sickness. When the hunt returned empty, they said her shadow frightened the deer. And when a woman's newborn died in the night, they said her shadow had slipped across the child's face and stolen its breath. Sia carried no blade, no curse, only her shadow. Yet in the tribe's eyes it was heavier than any sin. They stopped sharing water with her first. At the river jars, hands slid bowls away as Sia approached, leaving her to scoop with cracked palms. The boys laughed, calling it shadow water. She learned to fetch at dawn. When mist still hugged the reeds, she filled a small clay cup and hid it in a fold of her cloak. No one could taint what no one saw. At the cookfire, her portion shrank. "Eat after the little ones," an aunt said, but the pot scraped empty by the time the little ones were done. Sia chewed smoke instead of stew. An elder named Varro watched her closely. His eyes were like cold flint, always measuring. When people needed a reason, he handed them one and called it wisdom. "The shadow follows disobedience," Varro warned the circle. "Where the girl walks, the light withdraws." His staff thudded once, and fear fell into line behind his words. Saya kept to the edge of paths. She stepped where footprints were deepest, as if her shadow might drown there and let her live unblamed. It never did. One afternoon, the children played Chase the Night. They leapt through smoke to stomp each other's shadows, squealing. When Sia tried to join, they parted like water around a stone. A boy named Ren spat at the dirt. "Your shadow bites," he said, grinding his heel into the ground near her feet. "Keep it leashed." Saya swallowed the heat behind her eyes. "If you can leash yours," she said softly, "teach me how." The boy's grin cracked, then hardened again. That evening, The sun bled red through ash. Saya's shadow stretched long as a spear. The women gathering herbs crossed to the far side of the fire without speaking. Only one person looked straight at her, Mara, the herb mender, whose hands smelled of crushed leaves and smoke. "Bring me water at dawn," she said, "and don't step on your fear getting here." Saya nodded, surprised by the shape of kindness. Kindness is a language that leaves the mouth last but reaches the heart first. She clutched it like a coal to warm her sleep. At dawn, Mara set a bowl on the ground. "Stand here," she said, "face the sun." Sia obeyed, the light crawling up her ankles, her shadow shrinking behind her heels. Mara sprinkled ash in a thin line. "Now turn," she murmured. Saya rotated slowly. The shadow lengthened, then bent, then forked like dark water around a rock. "It changes with the world, not with you," Mara said. "Wind, slope, flame, hour, they pull at it. The tribe sees the pull and blames the rope." Saya's breath shook. "If it is only light and ground, why do they hate it?" "Because fear needs a face," Mara answered. "It tires of staring at empty air." She touched Sia's shoulder, the gesture clean of pity. "Let's teach them a better shape." Mara brought out a polished stone shard. "Hold it under your chin," she said. A second, faint Sia fell to the dust beside the first, thinner and bright-edged. Sia stared at the twin darknesses. One flowed jagged where the earth dipped. The other sliced neat as a knife, refusing the ground's tricks. "Proof can be taught," Mara said, "but proof without courage is a whisper in a storm." She wrapped the shard in cloth and pressed it into Sia's hands. "Tonight," Mara added, "we show the circle." Sia's stomach dropped, but something steadier rose beneath it. Not defiance, not yet, but the skeleton of it. When night fell, Varro spoke first. "The cough returns," he announced. "The deer keep away. The shadow drags our luck into holes." Murmurs tightened like rope. Sia stepped forward before her knees remembered fear. "I can show you what my shadow is," she said, "and what it isn't." Varro's mouth sharpened. "Children do not lecture elders," he said, "especially children who bring night to noon." Mara's voice cut in, low and even. "Let noon judge then. Fire here, stone here." She placed the shard, built a small flame, and smoothed a circle of dust. Sia crouched where Mara pointed. The tribe leaned in as her shadow forked. One shape warped by uneven ground, one crisp along the stone's edge. "Two shadows," Sarah the hunt leader said, frowning. "Same girl." Her eyes traced the slope, the rock, the flame's sway. Thought moved behind her scar like a stirred animal. Varro slammed his staff. "Tricks," he snapped. "Light can be forced to lie, and if light lies, what else?" A knot of fear pulled tight again. Ren, the boy, nudged his friend. "Make her run," he whispered. "Night chases faster." Saya heard him. She stood instead, slow and stubborn, and stepped from dirt to stone. The warped shadow straightened. The crisp one held. "Ground lies," Mara said. "Stones tell truth. Which will you believe?" The question hung heavier than smoke. For a moment, the circle wavered. Then Varro smiled, thin and tired of being challenged. "If her shadow obeys," he said, "let it do one humble thing. Let it not touch the shrine." Heads turned to the sacred stones. The firelight made them swim with heat. No shadow should cross them, not out of law, but out of fear dressed as law. Mara hissed a warning under breath, but Sia had lived inside warnings so long she wanted open air. She lifted the shard and moved toward the shrine. Her shadow stretched, seeking the stones. Sia adjusted the shard angle the way Mara had taught. The thin edge bit the dark, bending it away from the shrine's face like a reed in wind. Gasps broke around the circle. The shadow traced the stone without touching. A hair's width of dust lay bright between omen and object. Varro's eyes hardened to pebbles. He saw power slipping through his fist. "Enough games," he said. "Dear, fear what we fear. The girl is a curse while breath remains in her." Saya lowered the shard. Fear flared, then cooled into something steadier. "If I am a curse," she said, "why does your staff cast the longest shadow here?" The circle stilled. Varro glanced down. His staff's shadow ran black and spear-like over the sand, longer than Sia's by far. Sarah barked a laugh, short and shocked. Mothers hid smiles behind hands. Even Ren stared at the ground, mouth open as if truth were a bitter seed. Varro lifted his staff from the firelight. "Enough," he breathed. "We end this talk at dawn." He turned, and his shadow dragged after him like a hooked fish. Mara touched Sia's wrist. "Truth makes cracks," she said. "Cracks make doors. Step carefully, but step." Sia nodded once. Her fear had not left. It had simply learned how to walk beside her without leading. At dawn, smoke clung low over the huts. The tribe gathered again, called by Varro's staff striking the earth. His voice was hoarse but sharp enough to cut. "The girl brings division," he declared. "Last night she bent fire like a trickster. If we let shadows teach us, we will forget the gods." Whispers flickered through the circle. Some nodded, eager for simple blame. Others looked at Sia with new eyes, remembering her words. Mara stood at her side. Her hand rested on Sia's shoulder, light as a feather but heavy as a shield. "If truth divides, then lies have ruled too long." Varro's jaw clenched. "You speak as if proof is stronger than fear. But fear feeds obedience. Proof feeds doubt. Which keeps us safe?" The hunt leader Sarah answered, "Obedience starves when the deer do not come. Doubt can hunt where fear will not tread." Her scar caught the sun like a second mouth. Ren tried to laugh. "Let her prove herself then. If her shadow is harmless, make it walk across my feet." The circle parted, hungry for spectacle. Ren stood in the dust, arms crossed, smirk wide. Sia stepped forward, shard clutched in hand. She set the angle carefully. Her shadow slipped long across the ground, curling over Ren's toes without biting. He flinched, then froze as nothing happened. The crowd murmured. Some chuckled nervously. Others began to look at Ren as if he had been the fool, not the brave one. Ren's face burned. "You see," he spat, "even curses can sleep. One day, it will wake." Sia straightened. "Then you should fear your own shadow too," she said softly. The words cut sharper than any shout. Varro's eyes narrowed. He felt the tribe sliding away, grain by grain, like sand through an open hand. That night, the cough returned to a child. Fear lit quickly. Mothers whispered the shadow touched him. Varro seized it like a gift. "Proof lies," he growled. "Fear does not. The child sickens because we let her walk free." All eyes turned to Saya. For a heartbeat, the fire roared louder than breath. The council ring was lit with twice the wood. Flames shot high, shadows wild on the huts, as if the fire itself wanted a voice in judgment. Varro stood tall, staff raised. "The child sickens, the deer flee. This shadow eats our light. Shall we wait until it swallows us whole?" The crowd muttered agreement. Fear is quicker than reason, and Varro's words fed it like dry grass feeds a spark. Mara stepped forward, voice low but clear. "If fear alone is law, then any child can be condemned. If shadow is guilt, then none of us stand clean." Varro's staff slammed down. "Do not twist with clever tongue. She is cursed. The fire shows it." Saya lifted the shard of polished stone. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "If light shows truth, then let the fire speak again." Gasps rose, sharp as knives. To test in the circle was to risk more than shame. It was to risk the tribe's wrath if the fire chose wrongly. The chief, weary-eyed, spoke at last. "Then let it be done." Tonight we see if shadow lies or if fear does. They placed the sick child near the flames. The mother wept softly, clutching him close. All eyes turned to Sia. Her legs felt carved of stone. But she stepped forward, shard in hand, her shadow stretching across the dust. Varro hissed, "Lay it over the boy. If he lives, you walk free. If not, the mountain takes you at dawn." The tribe held its breath. Even the fire seemed to quiet, waiting. Sia closed her eyes. Then she lifted the shard, tilting it until her shadow slipped gently across the child's chest. The boy stirred, not with pain, but with a cough that loosened. His breath eased. His mother gasped, clutching him tighter. Whispers broke into cries. "He breathes easier." The shadow didn't bite. It soothed him. Varro's face turned to stone. He struck his staff again, but the sound rang hollow. Sia lowered the shard. Her voice trembled but carried. "My shadow is not curse. It is only proof of light." The mother kissed her child's brow. Tears streaked her cheeks as she whispered, "Bless the girl, not curse her." Her voice cracked but rang louder than Varro's staff. The circle shifted. Eyes that once avoided Sia now clung to her, searching for truth in her face instead of the ground. Varro barked like a cornered dog. "Coincidence! Shadows trick the eyes and sickness tricks the lungs. Do not be fooled by a child's games." But his words no longer ran downhill. They struck stone and scattered, leaving only the sound of doubt. Sarah rose slowly, scar glinting in firelight. "Her shadow did what yours could not," she said. "You speak of fear, but fear has not healed a child." A murmur of agreement rolled through the crowd. Some nodded, others bowed their heads in shame. The fire spat sparks as if mocking Varro's silence. That night, Sia slept near the edge of camp. But for the first time, no one spat in the dust by her feet. No one turned their bowls away. Yet envy grows where praise is scarce. Ren, the boy who had mocked her most, watched with eyes narrowed. Her rising respect was salt in his wound. By morning, whispers curled anew. "If her shadow heals," Ren muttered, "perhaps it steals first." Perhaps she gave the boy his sickness only to cure him after. Fear listened, hungry for a new shape. And once again, the weight of lies began to shift against Sia. Ren waited until dusk. The fire dimmed, and the tribe gathered for stew. Shadows stretched long across the dust like tired arms. He slipped into the healer's hut. A bowl of herbs lay waiting, bitter leaves to ease the cough. Ren scattered ash into it, grinding with his heel. When the child drank, he gagged. His chest heaved, his face pale. Panic spread fast and whispers rose sharper than the smoke. "It's the shadow again," someone cried. "It healed him once, but it has returned to finish the work." All eyes turned to Sia. She stood frozen, a bowl in her hands, her shadow spilling across the ground as if accused. Varro seized the moment. "Do you see? The proof was trickery. The curse waits until trust is gained, then strikes deeper." The mother screamed at Sia. "Why save him to steal him back? What game do you play with our blood?" Sia's throat closed. She tried to speak, but words cracked like dry sticks. "I did nothing," she whispered. No one heard. Ren smirked in the corner. He kept his hands clean, letting her drown in the tide he had stirred. But Mara stepped forward. Her eyes cut to the herb bowl, still wet with ash. She dipped her finger, lifted the grit, and pressed it to her tongue. Her face hardened. "This is not shadow," she said. "This is ash. And ash comes from fire, not from a girl's heel." Gasps shuddered through the crowd. All heads turned, not to Sia, but to Ren, who flushed under their stares. Ren stammered, his mouth dry. I only wished to test her, to show the truth." His words wobbled like reeds in wind. Mara's voice was sharp as stone. "You fed poison to a sick child and blamed another. That is no test. That is betrayal." The crowd surged with anger. Mothers clutched their children closer. Fathers spat in the dust. Ren's smirk had cracked into fear. Sarah grabbed him by the arm. "You mocked her shadow. Now we see whose hands cast the darkest mark." She dragged him toward the fire circle. Varro tried to intervene. "The boy is foolish, not wicked. Do not confuse mischief with curse." His voice was desperate, his staff trembling. But the people no longer bent so easily. They remembered the cough eased beneath Sia's shadow. They remembered Varro's long staff casting the longest black. The chief rose, heavy with silence. "For moons we feared the wrong shadow," he said. "We shunned the girl, while lies walked free beside us." Ren sobbed, falling to his knees. But mercy comes slow when trust has been broken. The tribe turned from him as they once had turned from Sia. Saya stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but steadier than any elder's. "Do not give me his punishment, give me my place." The fire crackled as if approving. For the first time, her shadow lay calm beside her feet, no longer judged, no longer mocked, simply hers. The chief's hand lifted. "From this night the girl is not curse, she is kin. Her shadow is no darker than ours, and perhaps brighter." The tribe bowed their heads, some in shame, some in relief. For the first time, the silence felt honest instead of cruel. Mara placed the shard back in Sia's hands. "Keep it," she whispered, "not for proof, for memory. Proof fades, memory lasts." Sia nodded, her eyes burning. She did not thank Mara. Some debts are too deep for words, and gratitude lives better in action than in speech. Ren was banished to the edge of camp. No chains bound him, but no voices called his name. His own shadow was now his only companion. Varro's staff lay untouched by the fire. Without fear to feed on, his power withered like dry grass after rain. He stared into the flames, his eyes hollow. Sia stood taller as days passed. She carried water without whispers chasing her, carved beads without laughter cutting them in half. Children followed her steps, curious rather than cruel. At night, she watched her shadow sway. It bent, curled, stretched long across the dust, but it was only hers, nothing more, nothing less. And the tribe learned, too late but true. The deepest curse is not a child's shadow. It is envy, fear, and betrayal that live in plain sight.